Hello, good morning everyone, and welcome you all to this session. Today's topics are hybrid cloud and multi-cloud. But before we go into that, allow me to share with you a story. Imagine that you own your own house, a big house with some rooms, and one of your kids is going to get married. You want to invite some old friends that live in a far distance, and you want to accommodate them the best you can. But you can't accommodate them all in your house. So you need to decide what to do. Or you can build extra rooms for them, or you can try to rent hotel rooms in some hotel nearby. This story is related to the first subject that we are talking about today, hybrid cloud. Because hybrid cloud is when you are using an on-premises data center and you also are using a public cloud provider. So, here with me I have Hugo Lopes and Vasco Silva. Hugo, do you have some real use case in some previous client at VFRL?
Yeah, regarding hybrid strategies, one use case that is perhaps very data-centric, so close to us, is with the databases and data stores themselves. One thing that companies try to do is try to move their databases into the cloud in order to take away maintenance from on-premises, enhance reliability, scalability, be able to scale at least vertical at the beginning. And so they can either lift and shift their databases into the cloud, or even perhaps go a bit further and re-platform into managed services in the cloud that will give them even more reliability and automated scalability, which is very important. Some customers that perhaps are a bit more conservative and don't want to outright move the data stores into the cloud may choose to simply start exporting and unloading and backing up data from on-premises into the cloud, which will, in short term, will give them enhanced reliability and disaster recovery process. The data is not only on-prem, at least they have a backup in the cloud, but they can also use this to start creating what could become a data lake. Once they have the data in the cloud, they can first make it available to a larger set of users to analyze the user data, to a larger set of services, cloud-native services. And also, let's say, for instance, if they want, they have other sources of data that they currently aren't analyzing. Let's think of maybe social media data. And before having the core data in the cloud, they will be unsure of the value of that social media data. Could they link it with their core data? They were unsure, and probably on-premises, the investment in infrastructure would be pretty big. So once they have the core data in the cloud, it's an easier investment to just bring the data onto the cloud, create, try, analyze, make some connections, and then understand if it's the value, and then use that to justify further and further go-to-cloud initiatives.
Thank you, Hugo. How about you, Vasco? Do you have any use case you can share with us?
Yes, I can share a use case where I was involved and we implement a hybrid cloud architecture. But first, let me give some context and the motivation for that. Nowadays, we know that cyber attacks are becoming more and more common. Is really a concern for the companies, as we already said, Hugo, saying on the morning session, this is something that is happening every day. We open the journal and we find a new company having been attacked. As much the bigger the companies are and more relevant, more probable they are to be attacked. The company where we developed that project was a Portuguese, a big company, and also very relevant. So they have a strict cyber plan to respond in case of being attacked. One of the measures that they have that is relevant for this case is that they have a policy where in case of they being attacked, they can define that they want to cut connections outside network connections. And with network connections, I mean internet and also VPN connections, which means that in case of being attacked, they can be in a situation where they don't have any connection to cloud. And this is exactly where our use case comes in. What they want to achieve is an application that is high available with or without cloud connection. And now you can ask me, okay, but why we need hybrid cloud technology for that? Because we already have applications running on high availability for years. But what happened is the company was already a cloud mature company, and they are very oriented to use cloud service. They follow the cloud-first approach because they want to avoid all the toil of need to keep high availability applications running on-prem. They don't want to have the typical stuff, the 24/7 support, planning hardware, interventions, software, the maintenance window, all of these typical stuff. So what we developed for that application, we follow a hot, warm approach, where the hot application was running on the cloud. It means that in normal case, everything is running on the cloud, but in case of attack, if the company was being attacked, the cyber teams that decided, okay, we need to cut this in minutes, we can just switch from the application that was running on the cloud for on-prem. It can be just disabled. Technically speaking, just for some information, how we did is we used Docker, Kubernetes, we follow microservice patterns, and this is the way that we could deploy that application. With this, what the company gains, was to have a high availability application, but without the effort to keep the high availability application running on-prem.
But were you able to give all of the features of your full solution only on premises?
No, not exactly. Not because this architecture, but because it is just a critical application, and they are not replicating all the applications for on-prem. So it will be running on a reduced set of features because they cannot access to the on-prem other applications.
Okay, thank you, Vasco and Hugo. I can also share with you an example. About 10 years ago, and this means that hybrid cloud strategies has been available for all for more than 10 years. At that time, I was working for a large Portuguese retail company, and at that time, 10 years ago, they had around 4 terabytes of data. That 10 years ago, it's a lot, okay, especially in Portugal. And at that time, they built a process that needed to aggregate those 4 terabytes of data every month to support reporting. The team developed a process to aggregate that data in multi-threads, running at the same time to reduce the time of the overall process. But at that time, remember 10 years ago, the process was taking about 48 hours to finish. That's a lot of time. And when this process was running, no other non-critical process was allowed to run on that same machine because this process had priority over them. This was working just fine, okay? But then the team decided to implement a different approach, taking advantage of cloud services. So they built a second approach where they copy the data and upload the data to the cloud, then process the data with the same aggregation rules, almost the same process, but in a large multiprocessor environment with a very powerful environment, and then they copy again the data from the cloud to the on-premises system. With this second approach, they could reduce those 48 hours to around 30 minutes. That is a huge difference. You can ask me, okay, but that cloud environment was a very expensive environment. And yes, it was, because they have lots of capacity to process multi-process at the same time. But as I mentioned before, they were using this process for around 30 minutes per month. Let's run it for 1 hour. And as you know, in cloud services, most of the services you pay for what you are using. So in the overall, that new process was not that expensive. Okay? And with this, we share with you 3 different stories about hybrid cloud. Let's now go back to the previous story that I told you about the wedding, when I told you that you have some guests to your wedding, and you were accommodating them in a hotel nearby. But now imagine that your guests had different preferences. Some of them want a great breakfast, for instance, and some others would like to have a health care with spa and swimming pool and other facilities. And for your concern, you need to pay attention for what you will pay for what they will use, and you wouldn't want to pay for services that your guests wouldn't use. This second situation is related to the second topic of today's session, multi-cloud. So Vasco, what can you tell us about multi-cloud?
Yeah, well, regarding multi-cloud, and speaking technically, is when you have 2 or more cloud providers. But more than that, the difference is not just because on hybrid you have 1, here you have 2 or more, is more looking for the approach. Because in this phase, the companies are already looking for cloud and their benefits. Because if all the cloud providers are equal, they don't want to use 2 or more, because everything are giving the same. So we are now in the era where cloud providers are giving us more than just CPUs or data storage. We have managed service, we have complete vertical solutions, all of this stuff. And why the companies goes there are several reasons. We have a lot of solutions, and we can have, as example, a cloud provider that is better, as example, for IoT, and another cloud provider that is better for reporting, for BI. So it is when we gain some benefits, and it's called the best of breed. It's one of the reasons. Another reason is, as example, when a company acquires another one. This one is more commercial. It comes from it's not so technical, but let's suppose that you have a company A that is using all the infrastructure, is using Azure, and that company A will acquire company B. So in this company B, use another cloud provider, GCP as example. So with the merge of this company, the responsibles for the IT will now need to handle with these cloud providers. That is not a technical decision. And it's also something that is important to understand. Being multi-cloud is not the end goal. No one goes to multi-cloud just because, oh, I want to use more than one. No, it doesn't make sense. You need to handle with more complexity. So you should have, or it needs to come from business requirements. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. But one of the cases that I was saying, it is more technically, and Hugo, would you like to go in deeper when the companies go?
Yeah, sure. One use case, again, that is very focused on our data analytics world. Let's say that a company, together with us, chooses Cloud A for their developments, because perhaps they feel that that cloud provides the best performance for the given architecture, for the given use case, or it has the best billing strategy, because they differ between clouds. It has the best billing strategy for the consumption that they are predicting in their workload. Or the more common reason is they see the cloud provider as a strategic partner, and they wish to choose because of that. Or perhaps also common, their IT staff, internal IT staff, is more comfortable with those technologies, with those services, and in order to maintain the workloads, that's an important point. And so we can develop almost an end-to-end product in that cloud. We extract processes, cleaning data, transformations, security, governance, all of it in one cloud. But when it comes to presenting the data to the users, either data scientists or business users through dashboards, the point of the data project is not to have the data, the high-quality data centralized, is to make them available to a larger set of users as possible, to promote the adoption of data insights everywhere. So it will happen commonly, this happens a lot, that some users perhaps they never used dashboards before, don't have any source of information, and they are okay with any technology. But other users are used to, let's say, a specific dashboard technology or integrations that dashboarding technology provides to them, and they want to use that service that is only available on another cloud. Or data scientists want to use services that are available on a third cloud. And technically, this is not the optimal solution, because you will, in fact, have delay when you send information to other clouds. You will have additional costs in transferring data to other clouds, additional costs to make that transfer secure. So obviously, it's not the optimal solution. However, when we think of this a bit further up, it may make sense, because if the end users don't feel comfortable with the way they are interacting with the data, they may not adopt the product. And we are always competing with the previous, or for most times, you are competing for the time of the business users versus a previous solution that they are using and comfortable with. So in these cases, it may prove worth it to adopt this best fit solution in which the developers and the IT staff gets the components that they feel it's best for them, fits their use case, but the business users, the data scientists, can also have the best fit for them. And this leads to a good solution that is motivated to go to multi-cloud environment.
Okay, thank you, Hugo and Vasco. Okay, we already talked about hybrid cloud and multi-cloud and share with you some use cases and with different motivations and benefits. But now it's time to go deeper in some odd topics, for instance, security. Vasco, what can you tell us about security in those environments?
The challenge. Yeah, security is one of the main challenges. Sometimes it can be overlooked at the beginning. And looking for the security, I will point three main aspects that is related with the user access administration, the auditing, processing, and also the active monitoring for systems, proactive security systems. What I already saw in my past experience is sometimes when, and what happens is in the companies, sometimes they are not so conscious that they will have this multi-cloud approach, because sometimes, oh, we will have just a cloud initiative and someone will handle the access. And at the beginning it works when you have one or two initiatives, small teams, but sooner or later you will get more people on the team, and you will get in a situation where you don't know now exactly why someone have access, sometimes not even who are someone, and this is complicated. It will be getting a state that is just unmanageable. The second point that is regarding the auditing processing is if you don't have a centralized way to monitoring all of this, to define, you also are not able to centrally auditing. If someone has access that is not supposed to do, you don't know why someone have or who give this access. The third point that is also related with these two ones, but in a more proactive way, and what I am saying here is also connected to the cyber attacks. It's important that you have mechanisms proactively looking for the security. And giving an example, it's easier. Let's suppose a scenario where you have your company and you are being attacked from different places. You don't know exactly what is happening. And if you don't have a central place to see this, let's suppose that you have two cloud providers, your application are being attacked, and you don't have this information collated. So let's suppose your cyber teams are trying to understand exactly what is happening, but they need to be jumping around the systems. They will not be able to quickly correlate this info and taking wise decisions to respond to that attack. Our suggestions to overcome this problem will be one solution if the company has a big fleet of VM, on-prem on the workloads. Probably they already have CM systems for that. That is exactly to respond to that. One solution could be to send all the information from the cloud providers for that systems. Of course, that it requires some customization, but with this, the company can continue using the same system that they have on CM. If the companies don't have this, they can use cloud provider service. They just need to select one of the cloud providers and using their cloud provider as the main repo for this information. Or a third option is to use a third party. There's a lot of third-party options for that on the market. They just need to pick one. But as summary, what is very important is to have a single pane of view and all the information correlated.
Okay, thank you, Vasco, for sharing us those concerns about security. And Hugo, how about lock-in? How can we manage that?
Yeah, lock-in is an important topic, especially for medium to large companies, and it's something that it's mentioned almost every time. I guess the biggest motivations that we see to discuss lock-in is that clients want to have the flexibility when negotiating with their providers, either application providers or cloud providers, and they want to be able to promote innovation within their architecture, their project, and their company, because the amount of lock-in will determine also how easily you can innovate. And the questions that we try to understand with every project, it's, okay, what's the likelihood that you may want to change providers, either cloud or application in the future, short-term, medium-term, long-term? And if you do want to change, how much rework are you willing to take on in that case? We can think of lock-in, it's not black or white, it's a big spectrum. We can think on one end of the spectrum, we have this totally lock-in free solution that is that allows for very short-term flexibility. Perhaps you share resources even between clouds, because by being totally agnostic, no lock-in, you likely can deploy it in multi-cloud environment, sharing resources, which will give you incredible short-term flexibility. You can quickly either remove a cloud provider or effectively reduce the resources that you are paying for in that provider, and achieve highest reliability as well, because then it becomes not just I have my data or workloads in multi-availability zones or data centers, not only multi-region, but multi-provider, which is another level of reliability. But this comes with high cost, especially in development. The development is much harder. The time to market of such a solution is also much higher. On the maintenance side, you will have more components to maintain, also more components that can fail, and you will require higher skilled team to maintain such a workload. So are there use cases for such a solution? They are rare. They exist, but they are rare, especially in data analytics, because normally we are not working with core business workloads. However, some use case, let's say, think of streaming, IoTs, where we really need to assure that reliability, this can be a good solution, but most times not at the project or architecture level, more at the component level. Then on the total other side, we can think of a totally locked-in solution. So we choose a cloud and we try to take the most out of the cloud, write in the cloud's native language, so to say, use the best services, the most perfected services that normally end up to be serverless services, which is very separated from the infrastructure that is managed by the cloud. And in that solution, likely you will have probably the cheapest solution, the solution with the least maintenance requirements. However, it will likely be harder to innovate. We need a solution, medium term to long term. And if you want to change providers perhaps in the future, you may have, in some situations, to develop it from the ground up. So are there use cases for that? Yeah, there are use cases as well, depending on the importance of the workload and also your strategic plans for your company. So we can think of like these two ends, but in the middle, there's a lot of considerations and a lot of options, and we try to understand with the clients what's the best one for them. One example of a compromise that we try to achieve in the middle is trying to separate infrastructure from business workloads. so that in case we need to change the underlying infrastructure, either cloud or on-premises, we can keep the business rules and workloads as static as possible. And we do this by, like Vasco mentioned before, using portable workloads, containerization technologies, and also focusing on open source technologies, or at least commercial offerings of open source technologies, which in the beginning to start, it's perhaps easier to use a commercial version because you don't have to host it, you don't have to maintain it, but you know at least that long term, in case you want to take that maintenance onto yourself and remove the licensing fees, you have that pathway in the future. I guess the third thing that we try to do, it's not a technological level, but more architecture and development mindset, which is to develop in microservice approach, which can lead to perhaps less efficient processes or more redundant communication. However, if we want to remove certain components of an architecture, either because of licensing agreements or simply to promote innovation, which is very important, it's a cleaner cut to remove those components and because of that promote innovation company-wide and at project level.
Thank you, Hugo. Another hot topic that is in top of mind of anyone that manages these environments is about costs. Vasco, what can you tell us about costs, how to manage this?
Well, costs have, when using cloud providers, you have two variables of complexity. One is regarding the prediction, and the another is also the accounting and the report, how you can do that. Why the prediction is complicated? Comparing when you are using on-prem, you know exactly how much it will cost. You already own that, and as example, you just need to know which workloads are being used for such an application to know exactly how much its applications costs in terms of running. When you go to cloud, it's harder to predict. Why? You have different models, but one very used is pay as a use. So what can happen? You cannot predict exactly at the beginning how much it will cost, and it could incur if your application grows a lot. It's difficult to grow to predict. Another problem is in the development environments. Let's suppose that it's not expectable, but you have, as example, a script or something. You have a bug that is creating a lot of infrastructure or an endless process. So it will incur also in expensive bills. The another point is the reporting, accountability. What happens in a single application running just on-prem? You know exactly, as I said, how much it costs. If you are using on different cloud providers, let's suppose the example I said, you have the IoT in one cloud provider, the analytics is done in the another. You should have a way to correlate all this info, and in terms of billing, you need to adapt your cloud providers to give you your information, the required, to be able to be the chargeback when you receive all this information. Regarding the first problem also, I don't said, but one solution for that is or to block some service that is not supposed to be used, as example, and also create some triggerings and active alerting monitoring system for that. As general, that is some topics that should be addressable on the landing zones, and when a company is starting for that, they just need to look for a landing zone where they want to address a lot of cloud providers.
Thank you, Vasco. So we are running out of time. We have only 1 minute left. So let's sum up what we talk about today. So we talk about hybrid cloud and multi-cloud. We shared with you some different use cases with different motivations and different benefits. We went deeper with some odd topics, just like security, lock-in, and costs. So I don't know if anyone of you want to ask us a question, I don't know, or at home in the Admeter platform, I don't know, if there isn't. So if further anyone wants to reach us, you can ask us a question via Admeter platform, or you can meet us here at BI4All City. We will be here all day long. So, thank you all.